Rorschach Inkblot Test by Zach Carhart and Evelyn de la Cruz. Creation of the assessment tool. Herman Rorschach developed the Inkblot test in 1921 by splattering ink onto pieces of paper and folding them in half to form a symmetrical image. Herman Rorschach only chose 10 Inkblot cards to create the Rorschach Inkblot test. Those 10 cards are still used to this day. It is not clear from where or what influenced Mr. Rorschach to develop the Inkblot test. However, during Mr. Rorschach's childhood, there was a popular game called Blotto. There are two parts of that game. One of the parts is described as playing charades using Inkblot. Originally, this test was applied to persons with hallucinations, specifically people who suffered from schizophrenia. Rorschach wrote his dissertation on hallucinations. It was during that time that he realized how differently individuals that were diagnosed with schizophrenia reacted to the Blotto Inkblot game versus those who were not diagnosed with that disorder. Since then, the Rorschach Inkblot test has expanded, making it available to be applied on individuals who have different disorders other than schizophrenia or do not have any type of diagnosis. This test is now used as a personality test in a projective style. The basic implementation of the test. During the session, the psychologist administers the Rorschach test. The client is shown the cards one at a time. While showing each card, the test administrator asks the client to describe what they are seeing on the card and discuss what the client is seeing. It is up to the test taker, which is the client, to tell the psychologist or the person administering the test when they are done with the current card and ready to move on to the next. Here we have a video of the most common interpretations of the Rorschach Inkblot test. Follow-up reporting. On the following session, the psychologist dedicates that time to discuss what they have seen on the Rorschach Inkblot cards with more detail. During that time, the psychologist addresses anything that seemed concerning on what the client had originally described seeing. Client then informs the psychologist where on the cards did they see what they have reported. Towards the end of the session, the psychologist who had administered the test will be able to see what the client had seen. This test is meant to assist the client on finding any internal or external issues that need to be addressed, as well as expose any psychotic thought pattern that may have never been detected before.
With regards to the validity and reliability of the Inkblot test, questions arose about the validity when Rorschach first introduced the test in 1921, because there wasn't really a comprehensive system that they could score the test on. It was just based upon the psychologist who administered the test's interpretation. So in 1973, after much research, a comprehensive system was introduced, and this was provided to create more reliability and validity of the Inkblot test, developing numerous variables in order to score the test. And then, so part of the scoring of the test, what the psychologist would look for would be the location of the Inkblot, of where the client had made known his what the Inkblot was, if he focused on a certain color or not, if he saw movement in the Inkblot, or if he encapsulated the full picture in his response, or just one place. So these are just some of the variables that were defined, and so this led to the test increasing in its reliability and validity. And then also how the tester incorporated his interpretation was how the individual responded. Was the individual anxious when he was giving his answers, depressed? Was he really defensive in his answers? So these were all researched and tested out to make the test more valid and reliable. As I said, there's a lot of questioning going into the test, and it's still questioned to this day about the validity of the Inkblot test. But after researching this and looking at multiple meta-analysis, it has been seen that the retest reliability of the Inkblot test is very good. That means that if an individual retook the Inkblot test again, his results would be the same. Again, and then also the construct validity of the test has been researched to be shown to be really good, and the convergent validity as well. And another assessment tool that researchers use, or psychologists use, the MMPI. So the convergent validity of the Inkblot test turned out to be just as good as that test. So the questions about reliability really hinge upon the interpretations of the test administrator. Thus, the inter-rater reliability is weak and still being researched. Even though a lot of instruction and learning goes and studying goes into how to interpret these tests, you can't take out the factor of personal bias through the test administrators. So that's why they're still trying to find a reliable source to have this inter-rater reliability strengthen. This test is not supposed to diagnose an individual, even though that's what Rorschach intended at the beginning. But he then realized, and so did a lot of others, so that this test was just kind of shown to show an individual's personality traits. This test is multidimensional. As I mentioned, there's a lot of variables involved, and so you can't really discern the reliability based on just one variable. It has to include all of them together. And as I said, more research is being shown that this is a reliable and valid test if it's actually used to determine personality traits among a population of individuals. Some strengths about this test were that when it was presented, it was a very breakthrough technique. It was kind of risque. It was very unique, using art into to see how a client would respond. It was very, it correlated a lot with the ingenuity of the day back in the 1920s. And then again, I said it has strong convergent validity as the MMPI, which is a highly respected and acceptable test today. Some of the weaknesses of the test is that this test must be administered to an individual. It can't be administered to a group of people. It must be interpreted by a trained professional, and it takes hours for these interpretations to be done. And also there's a lot of schooling involved, so there's not a lot of people who are able to interpret these tests. Again, as I mentioned, these results are based on the rater's interpretation of the responses by the client. So this can lead to some weakness in reliability and validity. But as I said, more research is needed. And that this test is really just a tool in the hands of a psychologist. There are more advanced assessments to look at personality traits. And so, but this is a valid test to be used. The theory that this test connects with the most is psychoanalytical theory by Carl Jung. And these tests this test was created when Carl Jung was developing his analytical theory, and Rorschach really looked up to Jung while doing this. And what we learned so far about researching this test, for me, I learned that having an ink block and incorporating art into developing a person, assessing personality, is really pretty cool. And even though it has its weaknesses and needs to be interpreted, I thought that how a client responds to art can really reveal what they're focusing on and what kind of personality they have. What we struggle with in this is that there's a lot of research done and a lot of differing opinions about the validity, reliability of this, and it's a very controversial test. So the research was very in-depth and very kind of over our heads for the levels that we're at right now. And so it was difficult to interpret all the results, but we kind of focused more on the explanations that our research articles gave us while researching this test. And that is it for our presentation. The following slides are a list of our references. And that is our presentation.
Thank you for watching.